Welcome to Kev's Travel Stories. Each week I'll be bringing you a story from the weird and wonderful world of travel, a world that can change the way you see life and love and even the way we find meaning. Places that are iconic and sometimes surprising and even terrifying. So sit back and enjoy while we go on a magical mystery tour together. Welcome to Kevin's Travel Stories, and this week I'm going to talk about the most peaceful place on earth. If you have listened to the Phnom Penh episode, you will have a sense of how I was affected and how any visitor to Phnom Penh in Cambodia is affected by visiting both S21, which was the Khmer Rouge torture centre, and the killing fields themselves, which are now a genocide museum and a deeply disturbing but deeply meaningful place to visit. Very luckily for me, once I had finished my time in Phnom Penh, the 2 or 3 days we spent there, Diamond, my great pal, he said, listen, we're going to go up to Angkor Wat. Now, we didn't get there in the best possible way. He is always looking for a bargain, and he said, I've got you a luxury coach. We're going to be up there very, very soon. It's only $8. It actually turned into being the local bus, which stopped at every single place. And it was the guts of 8 hours plus, a journey that would take you halfway around the world in a plane that took us up to Siem Reap, which is where the great centre of Angkor Wat, this huge temple complex, is based. If I was you and travelling to see the Great Temple of Angkor Wat, I would fly to Siem Reap. You can get flights from pretty much everywhere. It's a great airport, and you're going to be straight into this incredible place. But we didn't do that. We took the long route, arrived in Siem Reap in the dead of night, and prepared ourselves to visit Angkor Wat. Now, I had no idea what Angkor Wat was. I'd actually been on my way to Vietnam, but the visa fell through, and so this was Diamond's last-minute alternative. It turned out to be one of the great blessings of my life, actually, to have visited Angkor Wat. I'm going to tell you why. Firstly, for those that don't know about it, Angkor Wat is one of the most iconic, the most well-preserved temple complexes in the world. It was built in the 12th century by this great king, Suryavarman, who we followed in the footsteps of, actually, with my guide. And I would strongly recommend you get a guide when you visit Angkor Wat. They cost very, very little, and they are beautiful people dedicated to sharing the fantastic history of this Hindu temple that became a Buddhist temple in the end. And the story is like a real-life Indiana Jones. The temple complex was lost in the jungle till a real-life French Indiana Jones discovered it. And this sort of link to Hollywood continued because part of the temple was actually used in Laura Croft Tomb Raider, the computer game. But that's really selling it short. Angkor Wat has a magic that I'm going to just try to describe to you. Firstly, just setting it in context, that having visited the killing fields and the S21, there was something tugging at my soul. I didn't even sort of actually realize it at the time until I got to Angkor Wat. And Angkor Wat, you arrive there ideally at dawn, and you stand and you look at this incredible 5-kilometre moat. And if you go online and check out any of the photos or the videos of Angkor Wat, you'll see what I mean. But seeing it in the flesh is actually something else. And it has been my determination to take my family and particularly my 2 grandkids to see this before I pass on to that great place in the sky. You stand looking across this moat, and you cross what's called the churning of the milk. In the mythology, the churning of the milk meant that you could actually drink the water and you would never die. And the iconic 3 temples that you look at, they're a bit like the domes, and they have this sort of power. And the power comes from the fact that in the mythology, the domes are where the sky meets the heavens. So this is a place designed for the earth to meet the heaven, and there you will see the Buddha. So my walk with Cheney was across this huge moat. You go past the 2 chambers, and it's a long walk, so make sure you have your mosquito spray, you have your sun cream, you have plenty of water because you're going to be walking in 30 degrees, you're going to be walking many, many steps, and you're going to need to keep hydrated. There are no shops once you get into the temple complex, which is as big as a small city. So you really want to be prepared, you want to be well nourished, and you want to have a good energy level. So when you actually go through the first temple complex, you see on your left and right 2 small temples sitting on their own in this vast open space before the actual complex. This is where the king and the queen changed. And then as you go into the complex itself, you'll see on the walls a sort of a beautiful 3D image of the actual temple walk. And you'll see these elephants covered in gold cloth, the armies of the great king and his wife, and they were sat upon these gold elephants covered in gold, and they were taken into the actual complex itself. Then when you arrive, after possibly 50 minutes of walking, you actually arrive at the base of the 3 towers. And there's a very, very steep set of steps which you have to actually embark up. And it takes quite a lot out of you to go up, and there's usually quite a lot of people. There's a lot of foreigners. It's one of the really big sites that drags visitors from around the world like a huge spiritual magnet. It's very interesting as you get closer to the center. You're now walking up the steps that only the king and the queen were allowed to walk up. You get to the top. You take a deep breath. You have to stop and you have to gather yourself. And then Cheney said, okay, we're going to go to the sacred place right at the center. So I walked forward, and then I had this rather strange experience. I saw in a covert a little glimmer of gold. And as I got closer, I saw some people praying, and a man was handing out joss sticks. And I suddenly had this shimmer and this feeling, this emotional feeling of unease. And so, without thinking, I got to my feet, I took off my shoes and knelt, as the Buddhists do. And Cheney must have sensed something in me, because she came over and she gave me the joss sticks. So I held the joss sticks in my hand, in front of this huge Buddha, the same Buddha that the King Saruman and his wife had done homage before, thousands of sunsets ago. And I just sat and then just started to nod my head forward and back, and I can remember seeing the little trickles of blue from my incense sticks. And I just sort of opened myself, and a breeze came. And at that moment, it hit me like a punch. The horror of what I'd seen in the killing fields and in S-21, the actual remains of humans smashed to pieces by other human beings, it had affected me in a way I hadn't actually realized. I thought, well, I've seen Auschwitz, I've seen the horrors, I know the horrors of mankind. I found my own kith and kin, one of my brothers, dead on the floor. I know what death is like, but this was on a different scale, and it had affected me quite deeply. And it wasn't until I was at the top, on this exact place where the heavens and the earths meet, and where the Buddha was standing, this ancient Buddha with a beautiful gold sash across him, holding my incense, that I suddenly got this tremor. It was like a wave of peace, and this wisp of air came over me, and tears came into my eyes, and I suddenly got almost like a touch on the shoulder saying, "It's okay, Kevin. It's okay." And that was a real blessing. And I've never shared this before, and I've never experienced anything quite so peaceful. A blessing is something that's given to those out of the blue. And that's exactly what I received and what I needed. And that night, we slowly made our way out of Angkor Wat. We went up to the other temple. There's 3 temple complexes. We went to Nom Bagheng, and this is a big temple complex that looks over Angkor Wat. So you're up on a hill and the sun sets behind the three magical temples of Angkor Wat. And I was overcome with emotion. And isn't this the wonder of travel, when you go on these long journeys deep into a forest, taking hours and hours and feeling this is an awful waste of time and effort, and then suddenly you get this epiphany, this wonderful Joycean word where the dark clouds part and you get this lightness. And I looked across and the sun set over Angkor Wat. And then another little blessing happened. In the Orient, and know this as well, the darkness comes within 5 minutes. And I had been on my own at the top looking at the sunset, caught up with this whole thing, and I suddenly was lost on the side of Angkor Wat. And I tried to make my way down the path, and it's quite a dangerous path. And I'm starting to feel prickles of fear on my neck, beads of sweat. I can feel my heart pounding. I'm going down this path. I know Diamond and the rest of them are waiting at the bottom of the hill, but the hill's like 3 kilometers away, and it's getting darker. And I know there's a chasm to my left. And I really had a sudden shock of fear. And then, in the darkness, and all you hear, the little insects, and the hum of this warm Asian night, I heard footsteps, and I saw a little flashlight, and I turned and I stopped, and I wondered, could I be mugged? Is this an attacker? And suddenly I saw a smiling face, and it was a young lady from New Zealand. She said, "Oh, are you lost? Come on, come with me." And it was like an angel suddenly took me, and we walked down the hill together. And it was just extraordinary, that sudden meeting. Again, another blessing. And I think what I've learnt from travelling to places like Angkor Wat and the Killing Fields is that travel can show you both the good and the bad, the worst of human behaviour and the best, like an angel appearing out of the dark to literally guide you home. So that was the wonder of Angkor Wat. It is the most peaceful place I've ever visited. It is the most wonderful place. And I know from talking to others that they had the same experience. And I would really share with you this experience and implore you to go to Angkor Wat if you get the opportunity. And then get up at dawn and watch the sunrise, and then go up to Nom Pabang and watch the sunset. But make sure you have a torchlight with you.